I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. I place the future in the hands of God. We're in the workbook of A Course in Miracles. This is lesson 214, and it's part of review number 6. And this review has that phrase or that statement at the very beginning and the end of each lesson. I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. Today we're going back to lesson 194. I place the future in the hands of God. And this is what Jesus says about this lesson to review. He says, the past is gone, the future is not yet. Now am I freed from both? For what God gives can only be for good. What God gives can only be for good. And I accept but what he gives as what belongs to me. The word but does a lot of heavy lifting in the Course. But means just or only. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. And then I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. Now there's that great quote. The past is history, the future is a mystery, and the present is the greatest gift. That's why it's called the present. Now Jesus doesn't even mention the present here, right? He mentions giving, which is like gifting, right? What God gives is only good. God's gift, there's only one gift that God gives, and that's the present. That's the eternal present, in which there is no past or future. Past and future don't even exist. Now, this seems to imply that past and future do exist, right? Because he says the past is gone, the future is not yet. He doesn't say the past doesn't even exist, the future doesn't exist, right? They're nothing. Now, he might have said that, but he doesn't say that here. But he also mentions now, which is the present, right? Now am I freed from both. In the now, they don't exist, right? Now, past and future mean nothing. Now am I free, and only now. For what God gives can only be for good. There's that line in the New Testament, all things work together for the good, and Jesus actually mentions that in the text. He says, all things work together for the good. Now the Bible goes on to say, all things work together for the good for those who love God, or something like that. Jesus does not say that. He says all things work together for the good. And that is a statement, that is a universal statement for everyone, not just for people that love God. Now, and that goes beyond, I think, what the Bible is saying. Although the Bible, it's an open question about what the Bible, how deep the Bible really goes. But I think for the Course, God has a plan, and God's plan of salvation is the only plan that will work. The ego's plan will not work. Because the ego doesn't even exist. Separation never happened. Separation from God never happened. So past and future also never happened, because past and future are of time. If there's no separation, there can be no time, there can be no space. So they don't even exist in reality, which means that they don't exist now, but we think that they do, because we're still dreaming a dream of separation. And we still give credence to the ego, and the ego's one of the ego's greatest tricks is time and space, right? That's how we are convinced that all of this is real. But we also know, just by living, we know how relative time really is. And we all know that because we have a lot of phrases, time flies when you're having fun. A watched pot never boils, right? When you want something to happen, time moves very slowly. And when you're having fun, time moves very quickly. It's very relative. to the perceiver. When you're doing something you love, you lose track of time, right? You might lose track of the world if you're like enjoying a good book, for example, or if you're enjoying good company, right? You might lose track of time completely. And I accept what he gives as what belongs to me, right? I accept only what God gives. Only the gift of the present, of the now, is all that I really want, that I truly want. Earlier today, let's connect it to I'm not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me. You might hear some karaoke happening over there. I'm not a body, I'm free, for I'm still God, as God created me. The body is also a trick of the ego. The body is also a way to ensure that the son keeps believing in separation. The body and the world are part of this illusion that you could say that the ego has brought about to convince the son that the illusion is real. And we do seem to be very convinced that the body is us. But Jesus keeps saying, I am not a body. He doesn't say, I am not the body. He could say that, right? I am not the body. I am not a body. And we could really think about why that is, what the difference would be. Because in Eastern philosophy, you will hear more of like, I am not this body. I am not the body. I am not this body. You don't hear people saying as much, I am not a body. I am free, for I am still as God created me. I exist, my true reality exists only now, only in the present, in the eternal present. God is not a body, and I am not a body. God is formless, and therefore I am formless. A body is a form, and the body hides the content of what I really am, which is the Christ, or you could say the essence of love, or you could say the Son of God, or you could say Spirit, or you could say the Holy Spirit. It's all really the same. But I say Christ because in the text, we're reading chapter 25, which begins with the words, the Christ in you inhabits not a body. Right, so the Christ which we really are, which is the Son of God, the Christ is the Son of God, we are not a body, right? We have a body, but we are not a body. We have a body in the dream. As long as we think that we have a body, as long as we think that the body is real in any sense, now we can at least use the body as a way to help to bring us closer to the truth of what we are. And not use the body in any way that is loveless, meaning use the body as a way to attack, as a way to separate, as a way to create differences between ourselves and others, but rather what can bring us together. Use my body now to serve, right? To serve the truth and not the illusion. And so the other aspect of this that we can maybe comment on for a moment is I place the future in the hands of God, and the hands has the capital H. Now, why does Jesus say hands with the capital H? Why doesn't he say lowercase h? Does God have hands, like big hands with capital H hands? I think Jesus wants us to, there's a lot in the Course about the hand, like holding Jesus' hand, taking the hand of Jesus, taking the hand of the Holy Spirit, letting go of the hand of the ego. I don't know if Jesus, I think he does say that. But taking Jesus' hand, Jesus doesn't really have a hand. Jesus came to Helen not in a body. God doesn't have a body. God is formless. So how does God have hands? What does that mean? It's metaphorical. It means I place the future. I see time now as God sees time, right? I let go of what I think of as true in favor of what God thinks, right? So now I'm connecting my will and my thought to God's will and thought. But isn't that to say that God has hands, the hands of God, isn't that itself problematic that Jesus would say that? Isn't that maybe leading people astray by putting it that way? Perhaps. But there is this whole section that we just read where it says that heaven speaks to us comes to us in the language of separation, right? Heaven has to speak to us in the language that we can understand from where we are, believing as we do in separation. So heaven, or Jesus in this case, has to speak to us in dualistic language. So in that regard, saying the hands of God does make sense. Let's not make the mistake, though, of thinking that God really has hands, because God doesn't. Of course, there's also the clock has hands, right? So maybe there's a play on that as well. It could be the hands, the clock hands. I wouldn't put it past Jesus, and on that note, I said in my video earlier today, I was going to have a special treat at the end, and then I didn't have enough space, so I wasn't able to give you the special treat. But here's a special treat, and I want to compete a little bit with the karaoke that's going on. And we'll just maybe we'll just do some music appreciation right now. I'm not a body, I am free. For I'm still as God created me.
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my only friend. The end of our elaborate plans. The end of everything that stands. The end, no safety or surprise. The end, I'll never look into your eyes again. Can you picture what will be? So limitless and free, desperately in need of some stranger's hand in our desperate land.
Right there, we could just stop, and we could really go on a whole long. We could ride the snake to the lake, and we could talk about what Jim Morrison was just singing right there. Let's just say that this brilliant music. If you even just the tambourine, John Densmore with the tambourine. Classic, right? And Robbie Krieger, just amazing guitar work. Drop D drops the low E and the high E. Who told him to do that? Where did he get that idea to do that, right? Brilliant music. We could really talk about that song in depth, also in terms of the course. And I'm listening to the Doors again. I've been listening to them my whole life, really, but since I was 11 years old, and I read "No One Here Gets Out Alive" by Danny Sugarman about the life of Jim Morrison. Not a great book, as it turns out, in terms of the real story of Jim Morrison, but it's a good hagiography, like mythology of Jim Morrison. If you don't want the actual facts, but you want a version that a teenage kid would enjoy, which I did when I was 11 years old. But even now, approaching 60 years old, I'm still hearing things in the music, and I'm still hearing things in that Jim intended, or things that were mysterious in the words. It's becoming a little clearer, and I'm appreciating even more Jim's authorship and his intentionality in his writing. And he was very well read, as you probably know, and also highly intelligent. And he he doesn't necessarily get the credit that he deserves, and I don't know if I've given him the credit that he deserves in terms of the brilliance of the writing. So anyway, that's all I'll say. And I also want to mention that a lot of the early music was definitely heavily influenced by LSD. Certainly in regard to Jim, and certainly in regard to the song. That whole part about the killer woke before dawn, he put his boots on. That all came after a very big dose of LSD that Jim took. And I recently also heard, because there was some interviews done with John Densmore and Robbie Krieger, who are still alive, they're in their 80s, and they both confirmed that Jim had taken LSD before the Hollywood Bowl performance, which is also very interesting. Not many performers, as I understand, would take acid before going on stage. Some did, but I think that's, even the Grateful Dead said, Jerry Garcia said, after a while we realized that we couldn't play music and be on LSD. But I think because Jim didn't play an instrument, maybe it was a little easier for him. In any case, there's a lot to say about all this, but I'm going to leave it at that. Let's go back to the music for a second.
The killer awoke before dawn. He put his boots on. He took a face from the ancient gallery and he walked on down the hall. He went into the room where his sister lived, and then he paid a visit to his brother, and then he walked on down the hall, and he came to a door, and he looked inside. Father, yes, son, I want to kill you.
They were totally on fire. it's hard to go back, you know, to that time. I guess some people lived through. I didn't live through it, but I would think hearing the Doors for the first time was probably quite a trip, you know. But even so, even listening to them right now, you can kind of catch the spirit, right, of the moment. And one last thing I will say is that before the Doors formed, Jim Morrison was living up on a rooftop. This is also in the Oliver Stone movie. He was living on this rooftop, friend's rooftop, and he was taking acid regularly, and he would have these visions on acid, and he had at least once a very powerful vision of like what he called a mythic concert, where it was this whole elaborate rock concert that he was witnessing, which is fascinating, right? And that was maybe like Helen was having visions before the scribing of A Course in Miracles, and Jim was having these visionary states as well with the help of acid. That was a precursor or foreshadowing of what was to come. And he probably really learned a lot that he brought into his performances, into his singing, and into his artistry. And I don't want to, you know, some people are for acid, some people are against it, some people are neutral, but you can't deny the effect that LSD had on music of that time, the art of that time, the society and culture had a very profound influence. And I do think that the Doors were at the forefront of that change of consciousness that was happening, and was definitely one of the great groups of all time. You know, when you think of the great groups, the Stones, Morrison and the Doors were really into the Stones, and they were very heavily influenced by the Rolling Stones. The Beatles, the Stones, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, you know, you name it, the big groups, the Who, Creedence, all these amazing bands, Jimi Hendrix, Cream, the bands that probably their music will live on for quite a long time yet. The Doors were right up there, right? So I'd love to say more about it, but that's enough for now. And thanks for listening, and love to hear your thoughts. All right, rock on. See ya.